Hey, welcome back. Excited to do this video today and hope you enjoy this new background. It's using actually the scale from the Demco 8020 and 8020S line. Kind of cool. A friend and channel viewer created it. But today's video is just, I went on some pretty crazy searches this year, maybe even late last year, for specific knives. And I want to talk about some of the ones that led to some of the most fantastical searches that I did, or the most I guess resource intensive, where I spent the most time on them. And there are some that came along the way that went easier than others. I think of like the Oz Roosevelt and the golf putter. These are pretty prevalent. They're not as easy to get as a Benchmade bug out by any means, but these are out there and you can get them if you know your secondary market. So something like that didn't really make this list. This Demco in particular with the milled out scales was quite a journey. It probably took me over 6 months to find this. This is the 8020S with the lightweight scales on it. That was quite a bit, but I wasn't like going crazy on this. The big premise of this video are the things that I really went crazy to get. So we are going to focus on that. So I'm going to talk about some runner-ups because there were some that I spent quite a bit of time on but didn't make this final list here. So the first one of those runner-ups is going to be the SPK Lamia. I definitely spent some time trying to get it, but I was not going completely crazy. But man, I really wanted one of these, and I particularly wanted this Stonewash version in the collection. So glad I found it, but it's not the top of the list. The next one is the McGinnis Spoke. I definitely spent the most time in the second half of the year after handling one of these in the liner lock, trying to find one. I didn't go way above and beyond. Like, I could have paid a lot of money to get one sooner, but finally was able to grab one. This particular one's a prototype, which if you know the channel, I love it. So this one was definitely up there, but it wasn't the one I went craziest to try and find. So that one didn't make the final three. This one kind of fell in my lap, but if I was being honest, like it could have been one that I went pretty crazy to try and find. And there were a couple like this, but prototype number one for Mini FSD was definitely one I spent a lot of time trying to find. This one in the full size prototype. And then the last one, or second to last one rather, that didn't make the list, the Gareth Bull Knives Chamois. These were not easy to find, particularly this 3-inch with the washers and the spirograph here. Heck of a knife, but it wasn't too crazy. These do, I've actually had like 3 of these. They definitely sell, so you can get them if you're willing to pay the money. The last one, probably the one that was closest to the list, I really, really wanted to find a Demco 8022 in this prototype where it had the camo carbon scales. Super cool variant, and one that I was very glad to find. This one, again, kind of fell in my lap, but I did make some pursuits to find one of these throughout the year, so it was very close to making the top 3 list, but ended up not qualifying at the end of the day. So let's jump into it. We'll talk about the knives that I spent the very most time trying to get, that when I either saw them or handled them, knew I had to have. So we're going to start with number 3 of that list. When I saw the Makers Syndicate event in Indianapolis, Indiana, was going to have Damascus Oz Roosevelts, I realized that this was one that I really wanted to have in the collection, to the point where I knew that if I got in line, this would be one of my top 2 knives that I would pick. And I ended up with the exact one that I wanted, but it was not, it was kind of circumstantial. I actually got this after the show, but I wouldn't have found it if I hadn't gone to the show. I made some relationships there, connected with the people that had it, had to go find another very rare knife to get this. I found the guy I think it was a copper accented slotted duck in order to trade for this, and then was able to land this at table value, which is pretty unprecedented. There are only a handful, I don't know, 10, maybe 15 total Damascus Oz Roosevelts that have been made. This one is probably my favorite, personally. I know that a lot of people have other designs and variations that they like, but man, I really wanted this when I saw it. And it was one of the main reasons I went out to Indianapolis for that show. So that's number 3 on the list. Number 2 on the list, after going to the PNWCI show, the Hansen Onyx. Sorry, just shot a bunch of skin off there because the one thing I don't like about this knife is that that's not a chamfered thumbnail. But the Hansen Onyx was the one that stood out from that show as being, especially for the price, the table price, just one of my favorite knives I wanted. It was this one in the McGinnis spoke that I saw at that show, and I was like, wow, I have to have it. But this thing, I hadn't even met the maker or heard of the maker before that show. Saw this thing and knew it was just the silhouette, the rarity, the hand rub steel, the way that the maker's mark sits on there. It's so simple, but so nice. And it was one I really wanted and was able to get this at Maker Syndicate. This was my first come, first serve, the knife that I basically chose. You know, I spent the night camping out, and that was the knife that I got over this one. But it was right there. Could have gone either way. I had a feeling if I didn't get this, I was not going to be able to, you know, get it later. I had a feeling if I didn't get one of the Damascus Rosies that maybe one would show up. So that was kind of how I made that decision. But certainly spent, you know, again, travel all the way to Indianapolis, Indiana. Just love so many aspects of the knife and spent a ton of time trying to get that. Now, the one that I probably went the most crazy after handling, the one that I got kicked out of a Facebook group because I miswrote a search ad, a want to buy ad, and reposted it 2 times hastily and got kicked out of the Killer Customs group on Facebook, which is like the #1 group to be in to buy custom knives, is the VC Edge interface. This is my #1. I went the most crazy to buy. I handled this thing and I knew I had to own one. Just the unprecedented weight to size ratio. This is a full-size knife that weighs only 1.5 ounces. To put it in perspective, actually have it in my pocket right now, the Benchmade Mini Bug Out is the same weight as this knife, and take a look at the size difference. Plus, this thing's just Gryvery and, like, you know, way more minimal. This is like a beautiful full-size knife at only 1.5 ounces. It's crazy. I handled this thing, the detent, the sounds, the feel, the crazy layup of the M390 blade steel, in this case it's 20 CV, and into the carbon fiber, the overall aesthetic of the knife, and just the weight and the rarity and everything came together. When I saw this, I knew that it set a different benchmark for what was possible for light knives that were full size. And I went way above and beyond to find this one and many other variants. I probably had, at this point, 10 of these. I currently have, I think, 3 in the collection, with 1 custom on order from Jason Van Camp over at VC Edge. But this is one of my favorite models ever created, along with the other 2 out here. But I have to say that this one led to a lot of like late night searches and pursuits and conversations. Again, got kicked out of the Killer Customs group literally for putting up a want to buy ad that didn't have a price in it or something like that. It was something super trivial and honestly a little bit stupid, but my bad for reposting the ad multiple times without understanding what the issue was. But that ended up being my, you know, when I think back to the knife that I went the most crazy for this year to try and get, this was the knife. And it was because after my friend Derek sent it to me, Dirty Knives, if you want to follow him on Instagram, I just realized it was a must-have. As a knife collector, it was a piece of a collection that may not be for everyone, by the way, but as someone that appreciates really impressive engineering and you know, the lightness of the knife, it was one that stood out to me as one I had to have in the collection, and I just went crazy to try and get it. So I was thinking back on the year and kind of trying to decide what my last video of the year be. I don't know if I'll end up doing another one besides this, but I've got a week off work and have done almost no knife videos, maybe 1 or something. I've really tried to avoid it and just take some time off. This one's been on my mind of, man, if I look back at the year, some of the fun pursuits, some of the fun relationships I built and networking that I did, these 3 knives are pretty pivotal to a lot of that experience that I had. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please feel free to comment and let me know the knife that you went the most crazy on when you were trying to pursue it this year, and look forward to reading some of those comments. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more of this content, please like, subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.